Welcome to CBS17.com. I'm Jody McCrary, and I'm joined by David McLennan. He's a professor of political science at Meredith College and the director of the Meredith poll. David, what were your takeaways from this latest edition of the Meredith poll?
Well, we talked about a number of issues. We obviously focused on the primary election, and we found that the Democratic presidential primary is the most hotly contested. 3 candidates. We have Sanders, Biden, and Bloomberg kind of bunched at the top with Warren and Buttigieg a few points behind. But the real surprise to me was twofold. Number one, a lot of people are still undecided. And second of all, only about half of the people who had made a decision were firm with that decision. So to me, with really only 4 days left, a lot of variability in the electorate in terms of the Democrats. The other races for Senate, governor, on both sides just really weren't competitive. And so it's really just that one race.
Were you surprised by the high number of those races that weren't competitive, or how does that compare with the previous editions of the poll you've done?
Well, again, we're talking about incumbents in many of those races. And so whether we're talking about the Democrat for governor, Roy Cooper is a fairly popular governor, particularly among Democrats. So the challenge to him is relatively minor and not well funded. Same is true for Tom Tillis on the Senate side, although there was rumor earlier in the year that he was going to have a very strong, well-financed challenger. That person dropped out. And so, when you have so many incumbents, not particularly that surprising.
Can you explain what the hostile sexism scale is and sort of what the responses to those questions tell you?
Yeah, so at Meredith, we track the whole issue of how people feel about women as candidates and political leaders. And since this year we have a lot of women across the ballot, we decided to test that again. Well, we found over the years that a lot of people say they will support a woman candidate. Yet, as we saw in 2016 and other elections, they don't get voted into office like the presidency. So we decided to embed a psychological instrument, a survey, 4 questions to try to get at people's underlying attitudes. So you might say to me in the poll, yeah, women and men, they're both equally good as political leaders. But if you get at those underlying attitudes, like how you feel about preferences that jobs should give men versus women or something like that, you might find some differences. And so what we found is some differences between what people said they supported in terms of political candidates, men or women, versus what their underlying attitude said. So we said, there may be more sexism in the electorate than would be otherwise noted.
Looking at those satisfaction scores later on in the survey, there were a high number of Democrats who were dissatisfied with President Trump and a very high number of Republicans who were satisfied with him. Is that a referendum on Trump, or are there other factors at play?
Yeah, we've been seeing this trending during the Trump administration, and we call that the partisan gap, the gap between the Republicans that approve and the Democrats that approve. We're at almost historic levels of that sort of split between Democrats and Republicans. During Obama, during Bush, during previous presidents, we didn't see near that gap. 75 points, that's a huge gap. So it's really indicative of how far apart the parties are. If there was a Democratic president in right now, we might see the partisan gap equally split, but with the numbers reversed.
That gap seems smaller on the state level than at the federal level. Was there a reason for that?
Well, I think, you ask people about how they feel about the direction of the country versus how they feel about the direction of the state. It's pretty normal that they feel better about things closer to them, like the state, because they experience it every day. But Washington, for many North Carolinians, seems like another world. They say, oh, those people never get along. Congress doesn't do anything. The president, they fill in the blank. So I think it's that idea that they know North Carolina better than they know what's really going on in Washington, so they feel more dissatisfaction generally there.
David, thank you very much.
Joe, it's been great being with you.
All right.